Okay, hi. My name is Lindsay Kane, and this is my data story project that I did on what is the people's favorite Pokemon and why. So I researched a bunch of Pokemon um, types by like in groups by type, and I wanted to figure out why people liked the Pokemon they did, and if they had a favorite. So one of my data-driven questions was, is there like a certain agreed Pokemon that people would pick if they were presented with like a certain amount? So for a survey, I did five Pokemon and I wanted to see if people would agree on which one they picked. Um, and so I used a big data set for this. I got it from Kaggle. I just looked up Pokemon data set and I called it, or it's called the complete Pokemon data set. And it has every Pokemon from generations 1 through 7, which is not all of the Pokemon, but it is a good amount of them. And it had 800 rows. It had all these awesome stats like the attack, the speed, defense, everything like that. Um, it was awesome to find like the statistic based data instead of opinion based data to really see if there was like a statistical answer to these questions. And I thought people would be able to agree on a Pokemon. Um, I thought that they might just say, oh, hey, yeah, we can all agree on that one. If they were given like a set amount. I think there's too many Pokemon to agree on a single one. Um, yeah, and then I had this little visual on each country's favorite Pokemon from 2020, which is pretty cool. There's a lot of Pikachu on there. And then I did a survey through Google Surveys, or what is it, Google Forms. And I got opinions from friends, from people in the class, all kinds of people, just to see like what their opinions were on this. And then I asked a couple questions. I wanted to know if they were familiar with the media because that really affects their answer. And a lot of people like collected cards, watched the shows, played the games, or they were just interested in the characters. And some people didn't do any of that, which is also okay. Um, but I wanted to include that because it really affects the kind of Pokemon they like. Like some people might not even know that somebody's favorite exists. Um, and I also asked out of five Pokemon, I used Charizard, Eevee, Squirtle, Pikachu, and Bulbasaur. So these are kind of like the five main Pokemon. Um, they're like everywhere. They're just really popular. And I just wanted to see like out of these ones, which ones did you guys like the most? And I also included a linear scale question to see how how much they liked that Pokemon, just in case like some they really didn't like any of the Pokemon I gave them. And I actually ended up with pretty good results. So almost half the people liked Eevee, which was a lot more than I thought. I thought Charmander was going to be the big winner. Um, but a lot of people liked Eevee. And I also took the pie chart from how much, or this is actually what the most appealing factor is. So this is why the people picked Eevee or whoever they picked. They really like the appearance and design, which I thought was really interesting because a lot of people like strong Pokemon instead of like pretty Pokemon. But Eevee has a lot of designs and they look really cool. Um, and then I looked up some Google Trends charts. This is worldwide interest in Pokemon. And it was kind of going the same steady until this giant spike, which was Pokemon Go, the release of Pokemon Go, which was really interesting because that kind of brought like a lot of people into the Pokemon scene. This is the same in the United States. It was the same date and spike for Pokemon Go. And then I also looked up Eevee just to see um what was going on with Eevee because that was the most picked Pokemon from the survey. And there are two significant spikes here. This one is from Pokemon Go, and this one is from Let's Go Eevee, which was another game that released because people love Eevee. All right. And for the survey data analysis, you had to clean your responses. Otherwise, they were kind of gonna, I didn't want them to be super messy if I did anything else with the data. And I looked at all the data, just making sure, like I did a little scan, a visual scan to make sure that everything was good. Luckily, Google Forms is really good about that, and I made some of the questions required so that I wouldn't get blank spaces. But I did get a couple blank spaces in stuff. So when I got that, I just removed that piece of data, the whole like row, so it wouldn't affect the data negatively in any way. I checked for range constraints, incomplete answers, nonsense answers, like stuff that didn't make sense, any data type constraints. So if somebody wrote a number instead of picked an age, I fixed that. And then there were only a few. Most people were really good at that. And then for my Python program, I actually had to input some wrong responses, um, just to mix it up a little bit so I could clean it. Um, and then I created some summary tables here. So this one is the average age of people and how old they were, or the average age of how old people were doing different things. So if people were playing the games, the average age is 18 and a half. This is just kind of analyzing how old people are with each kind of like how old people are in general kind of interacting with the media, which is just it's helpful to see. And I liked it because it kind of made me relate to people. Like the 19-year-olds were kind of interested in characters, which I also am very interested. Um, I'm not sure who was 29 though. It was interesting. And then this one is the more helpful one to the other data-driven questions. This one is the averages of each type, average attack of each type. So it really helps break it down to see which type is the strongest. Like, this one had 106 as the average, which is really high. I think that's dragon. And that makes sense because dragon is relatively strong type. And this is just a really good pivot table to see like which one is which and to compare it to the survey and see, hey, does this kind of line up for people who picked like strength and type-based abilities? And then for the visualizations, I found this visualization. Oh, it does that all the time. It's about like what is the best Pokemon based on how many Pokemon a type is strong against, which I kind of thought was pretty ineffective if you don't really know all that much about Pokemon. So I didn't really like the way it was planned out either by each type, and it's just a dot on a scatter plot. I think it would make more sense if it were like a bar chart describing a different statistic. So I said that was pretty ineffective. And then some of mine were a little ineffective too. That one was kind of crazy because it had all of the Pokemon, I think. But I did really like this chart. It shows the average attack based on type, and it's just a nice line chart, shows you very clearly each attack compared to the other types. And it shows you very clearly on the side how much they have. And also, this is a very helpful thing, um, a very helpful little chart to show like the defense based on type. So these charts both can be used to see um if the survey data lines up, kind of say like somebody picked a different Pokemon and they liked it because of type-based abilities. You can look back and see like, oh, does that actually make sense? Or are they kind of crazy and they like a bad Pokemon, which might give you a different reason, like appearance and design, which is the most that people like. Um, this is by Data Studio, and I did it on the dark type Pokemon and the fighting type Pokemon, and I just did like their HP, their attack, and their speed to see the strongest out of each one, and then I got some more bar charts in here, and this helps to just kind of break it down by type, find the strongest, and see if that was any of the favorites to see if kind of the data lines up in both scenarios, the opinion based and the statistic based, and we'll find out. So my final program, this is a lot, so forgive me if I take a little while, but it was just basically a big program where we got a menu and the user could input a different number to see each type or each different thing that was studied. So it included the overview, data-driven questions, the basic statistics, simple data visualizations, survey analysis, data set analysis, and then findings. Um, and my we did like everything that we've done in the class, basically. So the whole thing is constructed around a while loop, and there's a bunch of functions that were created and defined. So the while loop keeps going. It presents a user with input, and then it just keeps going until it's told to stop. And it was stopped at the eighth option in the main menu. So every time that somebody would put in a number that's not eight, it would just keep going. So you could pick as many choices as you wanted, except for eight. And then I had a couple, like actually a million different functions that were each created to do a different little task. So a lot of these are like check age functions where it's very like it checks the the constraint to make sure that like the number is in the correct parameters, I keep saying. But just make sure the number is like a number, it's not a blank, and it's in the correct spot. And that was also an option that was for the menu function. So when you input a number, um, it was like it would give you an error message if you put in like a nine, because there's not nine options, or if you put in like the number, like spelled out the word nine. Um, and then there was a lot of conditional statements like this for the check age. So like if something was true or if something was present in the program, it would keep going. And if it wasn't, it would give you an error message. That was really helpful to see and make sure that everything was kind of correct in the data, especially when you're dealing with like big data sets like that. Um, so the functions here were created from the defining the function, and then a lot of them returned a different thing to then call back again. And each of these functions will not be like it won't work unless you call it in something. So a lot of the big functions are called into the main function, which just kind of puts everything together and then calls it all at the end. Um, yeah, let's see. So I did a list for some of the visuals in this as well. Um, here I can see, or you can see that I created a list for this. And it was, you could have just put the list in and then use matplotlib and it creates a little graph for you. It's really cool. But I had to create a list and then put it into the visual function. And that's like passing the argument of these lists. Um, and then when you go back to that function, it just has little placeholder for those. So you could pass in any different type of list you wanted. You could change these values or whatever. Um, and then I also created some data frames through pandas just to make sure, or just to make like another visual for the project and everything. I don't know if I have it on here. No, I just have visuals. Oh, I do have one. So this is a little data frame um, to show like the attack and speed of a lot of different Pokemon. I think this must have been Steel type or something. Oh no, I think this is Psychic. So this is the average attack and speed of Psychic Pokemon. Um, and that was really helpful to like kind of break it down by type. And I created a function that was able to um take any subset of a data set. So whatever I wanted to pick out, I could just put it in that function and it would give me the options that I wanted. Um, yeah, and so the visuals here are really helpful to support these my data-driven questions. It was that Eevee is clearly the most chosen answer, which was also shown in the Google site. And it's just really helpful to have another visual here and created from the survey data in Python. And this was just a visual of how much people liked the Pokemon they picked. So you can see that a lot of people really liked the Pokemon and not too many didn't like the Pokemon that were presented, which was um good data because then it got people who actually liked or it showed that people actually liked the Pokemon that they were picking and not just nothing there. Um and then these are more visuals on each different Pokemon, which was really interesting that I kind of found out is that a lot of the Pokemon that were the strongest in each type were not picked as a favorite, even in the write-in. So I thought that was really interesting. Like Meloetta is the strongest in the Psychic for here. Um, but this could also be because this isn't all of the generations. This is just a couple. I didn't include like megas or ultras for a couple as well. So if I were to do this research in the future, I'd probably include a lot more stuff just to make it fair, include all of the Pokemon, and then if I had to do a survey, I'd take like a bigger chunk of Pokemon to find out about. Um and yeah, so I think we can say that people do agree on a Pokemon when presented with the top five. Eevee was the big pick here, and then they pretty much really do like Eevee. And this was kind of like to see if there was a set strongest type. And I said no, not really, because each type has their own strengths. They kind of go differently with each thing. You'll need different types of Pokemon for different types of things. Especially in like the card game, you'll need a different deck for whatever you're fighting. So I said there wasn't really a best um type. And I think from the survey, we can assume that people do like Eevee as the best Pokemon. Um, so yeah, this was really interesting to research, and I liked doing it on a topic that I thought was fun, and it was awesome being in this class. I really like this class. But yeah, thank you.